va commencer.
And now we shall
Et maintenant, on va
embark on the
commencer
first panel.
la première table
And I
ronde et
give
je
the
donne la
floor
parole
to His Excellency
à son
Mr. Ahmad
Excellence,
Jalali,
Monsieur Ahmad
Ambassador,
Jalali,
Permanent
ambassadeur
Delegate
délégué permanent
of
de
the
la
Islamic
République
Republic of
islamique de
Iran
l'Iran
to UNESCO.
à l'UNESCO.
Merci. Thank you very much. Okay, wonderful. After all of these wonderful events in the morning, the colorful ones, and the good lunch and other things, now we are going to start our first panel. Our first panel, the title is Science, Ethics, and Spirituality, the contribution of Avicenna. Why we put this title, what the conference organizer put, the contribution of Avicenna or Ibn Sina, because in 2002, my country, Iran, established an international prize in UNESCO called Avicenna Prize for Ethics in Science. That prize was established to encourage the issue of ethics in progress of science. Let me explain for you. Here, for those young people who may not know, I would like to explain that we have UNESCO, United Nations, E for education, S for science, C for culture, and O organization. When, on the beginning in 1945, they were going to create UNESCO in conference in London, first they suggested UNESCO, without S, UNESCO, because at that time, some people were arguing that when we talk about culture, C, that covers science as well. Therefore, there is no need. But at that time, there was a group of young scientists. Their leader was Joseph Needham, the famous scientist who was at that time in China. And he, with some other young scientists, they try to make a campaign to say that no, you should add this S, UNESCO, not UNESCO, because the scientific gap, the progress in science, in scientific progress, if there is a big gap between different nations, that will be the source of imbalance, and that will increase the danger of conflict. Therefore, one of the duties, one of the missions of this organization is to use education, science, culture for the sake of peace. How are we going to employ these three elements for the sake of creation of the idea of peace in the minds of man through intellectual and moral solidarity of mankind? This was the raison d'être of this abbreviation that you see now. Then later on, in the second half of the 20th century, you witness a very rapid progress in scientific field, very rapid development. Suddenly you realize that from that progress, some dangers are coming up. One of them, environment, for example. Everybody knows about that. Then we started to think that to have a link between culture and science and nature and education and life, we need some ethics. There should be some norms to control. Otherwise, neither culture nor science nor education may not culminate to peace. We have seen examples here. Therefore, we created this prize, Avicenna Prize, Ethics in Science. Each 2 years, the international jury will choose the best one, the best research, the best scientists who did such a new contribution to the field of ethics in science. We had many laureates. The last one, which was chosen in 2017, Professor 2015 is here, Professor Shinwari is the last laureate of Avicenna Prize in Ethics in Science. I will invite him later on. Professor Shinwari, can I invite you to come to the podium? And in UNESCO, in the section of humanities and social sciences and humanities, we have an ADG. That section is taking care of the issue of ethics as well in different fields of UNESCO. Now we have the problem of climate change. Now we have the problem of environment. Now we have many problems which is telling us that we have to include documents relevant to the international instrument in ethics in science. Here we have Madame Mélo, the director of this section, responsible for ethics in UNESCO. Madam, can I invite you, please? Madame Mélo. Angela Mélo, Director of Policies and Programs in UNESCO's Social and Human Science sector. Okay, before we start our discussion, I think Avicenna or Ibn Sina is a renowned name is a universal name everybody knows. But for those very young people who may not heard enough, I have to mention that Avicenna, Ibn Sina, he was a Persian origin in 10th and 11th century. And he is a renowned scientist and philosopher, and his books in philosophy, in medicine, in other sciences used to be translated to Latin, to other European languages, was taught in the universities here in Europe until 17th century. So because he is a renowned scientist, he is a renowned philosopher, he is known, this name is universal known, it does not only belong to one nation or one geography, he is a character for humanity, and because he is known as one of the founders of the discipline of ethics in science and philosophy, and he was master of all of this discipline in his time. I am sure that in the encyclopedia of philosophy and science and ethics and related knowledges of the time, everybody in every encyclopedia will go through Avicenna or Ibn Sina. We are honored in UNESCO that we put the name of this renowned personality on our award because it will remain forever, forever. Avicenna will be a star in the field of science, philosophy, and ethics. I may have time later on, because I'm one of the speakers as well, to tell you more about what we are going to do here. But let me join my colleagues here. Madam Angela Mélo, my dear neighbor here, as I mentioned, she has lots of responsibilities here, and the whole process related to the Avicenna Prize is one of his jobs. I think that it is better, instead of me talking about her job and what she's doing and the importance of that prize, may I ask, Madam, first of all, to tell our audience, especially the young people, what your section means for UNESCO first. Second, what are you going to do to develop the spirit of intersectorality in different fields, different disciplines in UNESCO, and then give us a report relevant to our discussion here, as you see in the title, and then go wherever you want to take us during your deliberation. Please, Madam.
Thank you very much. A very good welcome and good afternoon to all and each of you. I'm very proud to be here before you and before the organizers, and also I'm happy to interact with the ambassador, which is very supportive on UNESCO activities on ethics of science and technology. First of all, I'd like also to congratulate for this organization and to recognize the efforts from the Islamic Republic of Iran, the permanent delegation of Côte d'Ivoire here present, the permanent delegation of Togo, of UNESCO, the World Fellowship of Buddhists, the Pure Land Learning College Associations, Association of Master Chin Kung's Friends at UNESCO, and of course, Ambassador Ahmad Jalali for his kind support for creating also with the support of his government, of course, the Avicenna Prize, and support to Mrs. Nada Al-Nashif. She's busy with another activities today discussing and interacting with member states on dialogue of strategic transformations. And of course, I'm pleased to be here before you. I have a long speech, but probably when I will talk about Avicenna, and I would like to read, because it's very straightforward messages. And I'd like also to be listening and to interact with you. In terms of the section, I'm a director of the programs and policies at Social Human Science sector. And one of the sections is ethics. First, bioethics, which links of life of science, and ethics of science and technology. So all things relate to advancements and progress of science and technology. This means that we apply or we reflect on ethical issues related to the scientific progress, because we need to have a better understanding of the progress of technology and science, and also to have the impact, to analyze the impact on these technologies, on the people, on the ground, on the environment. So this is why ethics component must be part of all these reflections, including ethics should be part of the man and the environment, man or human. When I speak about men, I'd like to have this man as a unity, women and man, with the environment. This is very important. This is why we established, or the General Conference adopt the Declaration on Ethics in relation to climate change, which is one of the normative functions of UNESCO, to set up the normative instruments. And also I'd like to recognize the instruments adopted by General Conference in 2017, which is the recommendation on science and scientific conditions. It means that all member states have been or are encouraged to support the scientists, providing a long-term career and stable career, sustainable, and based on academic freedom, intellectual freedom, and also to have this ethics to education. We don't have now ethics education in general. We'd like to introduce ethics education, because I saw immediately you are talking about ethics education. This is very important for children, for young people, because we need to have our minds full of ethics and values in order to promote peace. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult if you don't have these values and to analyze, to interact with the member states and the people as well in general. So I'd like to say something on Avicenna. First of all, Avicenna can be considered as a scholar who made the link between West and Islamic world. There's a tendency to consider science as a purely Western phenomenon, but one often forgets that not only writing, but also the concept of zero, mathematical demonstration, were born in the region that is now called Middle East. Avicenna takes us back to a time when the main cultural, intellectual, and scientific lights came from Persia, the Middle East, and other non-European civilizations, whilst Europe was at that time in what has been called the Dark Ages. The very reference to the name Avicenna is a reminder of the extent to which the Western civilization is just one among others. Hence, Avicenna can be considered as contradicting notion of development of the 20th century and the simplest and linear vision of history that it's implied. While Europe was not yet aware of the teachings of the ancient Greeks and Romans, the Persian world cherished and nourished this heritage. Yet, The Islamic tradition, of which Avicenna was in a way the central figure, was preserved the work of Plato, Aristotle, and Greek science as all for more than 800 years, by welcoming the medical and philosophical achievements of the Greeks, their mathematics, logic, astronomy, and inherited the Norman notion of law. Under the moral figure of the great Avicenna, Persian culture has been an incomparable source of scientific and cultural innovation over the centuries. Avicenna was born in the 980 and who died in 1037. He is enlightened scientist, philosopher, and poet, advisor to princes, and father of modern medicine. His work is characterized by a rejection of the magical explanations, scientific rigor, the experimental methods, and critical thinking. Regrettably, significant part of Avicenna's work have been lost, in particular his treatise on illuminated philosophy. What remains is the famous Canon of Medicine, which was used in the West for teaching medicine until 78th century and which is still used in the East today. His other major piece of work is the Book of Healing, which is a philosophical masterpiece for the discovery of Athenian philosophers in the medieval West. Is interdisciplinary nature of his work that makes Avicenna an extraordinary character. His intellectual contribution to philosophy is undeniable. Avicenna was known in the West when before the discovery and study of the texts of Plato and Aristotle. So Avicenna has this holistic way to think and to act. He was a doctor, philosopher, and poet, and he also is a political as well. So I think I deliver a message on Avicenna. If you are interested on seeing more, I have the literature on Avicenna. Wonderful. And I'd like also to say something to the ambassador and to the audience here, that in terms of strategic plan and transformations for the next C4 means the 4 years midterm strategy of UNESCO, we would like to have an ethics education. So to teach children and to teach the young people. And also, I think one of the, you can teach people under the theory, okay, and the teaching, etc. But also there is some kind of tools that can embed ethics, behaviors, and attitudes. For example, quality physical education. Through quality physical education, you have attitudes, you have games, which you teach ethics through the games, to traditional sport and games. You can have ethical principles in this tool. So this is the way in which UNESCO is doing. And if you have resources, I'd like to invite you all to collaborate with us in terms of ethics. Another forward activity we would like to introduce at UNESCO is of ethics on artificial intelligence. So this is the algorithms. You work with our smartphone. There is algorithm on smartphone. So everything is now robotics, or everything is now with the artificial intelligence. But at what extent does artificial intelligence has an impact on the ground, has an impact on people, on the environment, on our spirituality, etc.? We need to think, and we will move forward on feasibility study on artificial intelligence, ethics on artificial intelligence. This is the main two programs we'd like to share with you. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Madam Mélo. We may come back to you,
Okay.
and also we may have reactions, as you said, from the audience after we listen to Professor Shinwari.
Okay.
Professor Shinwari, Madame Mélo explained the raison d'être and the necessity of that section in UNESCO. And now, here we have one example. Professor Shinwari, that all of his life, he has been engaged in science and ethics both. And not only that, because there are some academics who are engaged in the relation between science and ethics through academic deliberations or research. But what makes Professor Shinwari unique, a unique case that we can introduce as an example, is that he tried to engage somehow the social life of the people, the society, the ordinary society, civil society, in different levels, towards the engagement of ethics and science. I know a lot about his activities, but I prefer not to take your time and leave the floor to him. Professor Shinwari, welcome here again, and please tell us. Please tell us very briefly, what are you doing and how happened that you were shifted to this line of life, and now that you have been in UNESCO for different occasions after you got the prize in 2015, and now you see this occasion that is trying to, through interreligious dialogue, spiritual dialogue, bringing people together with different type of belief, how you will find your activities relevant to our job here and the job discussed by Madame Mélo. Professor, you have.
Thank you very much, first of all, UNESCO, now my second home almost, Madam, His Excellency, for inviting me. How I have a presentation for you where I will be linking all these questions that you put on. But first, very briefly, do you want me to put a presentation or shall I later on? Thank you very much. You know, how I was involved is a very interesting question. I was a son of a laborer, a poor person living in the mountain. I personally am a tribal man. Shinwari, if you Google it, they live on a tribe in Afghanistan and Pakistan on the border. So from the childhood, I was watching the suffering, and today I will be telling you the suffering what the world is today. And I'm very pleased and I'm very happy you invited me. I'm really grateful. I was thinking I missed another event somewhere in another part of the world, but believe me, thanks to the nature, to Almighty that I'm here, and thanks to UNESCO and His Excellency Jalali for inviting me. Now, when we talk about, because they talk enough about Avicenna, but still, you know, as a science student, if some of you study science, some 1,000 years ago, a person comes and he says he wants to study. Look at his canvas. His canvas is so broad, from medicine, psychology, pharmacology, geology, physics, astronomy, chemistry, philosophy, and religious, and harmony of people, of interreligious harmony. Look at that person. Then 500 after his life, people talk about speciality narrowly. And I'm cutting short. Today, again, after 500 years, we came to the conclusion that that was the best kind of activity to know everything, something about everything. Otherwise, you are nowhere. If you talk about artificial intelligence, robotic, whatever, you have to understand different sciences across biology and natural sciences, then you will be, coming to know all this. So may I have next slide? And how will I, they will be having it? Yeah. This is some of his achievements that he had done. In medicine, he had a great name. And today, when I listen to the great people, religious leader, believe me, all the religion in one way or the other are same. They are teaching peace and harmony. Whoever when I was listening the message now, and the Buddhism teaching since morning, believe me, what Avicenna was saying is the same. And I will be showing you, I didn't know that when I was making slides that you will be saying this, but I will be telling you what they were saying. So, if you look at this, you were talking about how UNESCO was built. Read here, to build a better human through integrated education, covering morality, religion, mental and emotional strength. This is what he says 1,000 years ago. And this is what we today even we need to talk about. Next, please. So, when His Excellency Kobayashi was saying something about Buddhism, look at this. What he says, that information and discussion about different kinds of interaction. At geology, from water, today you talk about it. You talk about climate change today. You talk about information in the earth. He was talking 1,000 years ago, the issues that you are confronted today. And then I'm giving you some more information of today's science in relation to 1,000 years ago. One individual was saying something. And you look at the diseases that you are confronted with today. Diabetes, or whatever food you are away from nature and you got yourself involved in things that you cannot find cure to it. Blood pressure, diseases, these are all related to the peace of mind rather than a kind of things. So if you have peace in mind, your health will be good. And this is today's teaching that I learned from here. And if you look at we have other issues. We now talk about weapons of mass destruction. When we talk about infectious kind of viruses and bacteria, he talked about quarantine 1,000 years ago. That be careful when you will be, passing on viruses, bacteria, and other diseases to each other. He talked 1,000 years ago, another evidence-based medicine, etc. I have many slides, so I have to be quick. Please, next. But this is the real world we transformed from 1,000 years to today. What is the real world? You say, we have grown up in the last 300 years per capita development. What kind of development? The development that you have grown in the last 300 years, the reality is that every second 4 people die in the world because of hunger. They don't have food. And if you look at the division of the wealth, the 26% of the world individuals of the world has more individual person, have more wealth than 50% of the bottom of the population of the world. That is that we live in. 1% of the world population has more wealth than 50% of the bottom population of the world. That is the world that we have transformed in the 300 years. Do you call it a growth? And then we have given up at the cost of what? Environment, climate change. All this is the benefit that the mass people, the world at large has got from this wealth that only 1% of the population of the world is enjoying. They destroyed the 99% world's population peace of mind. And then there is other violence, etc., linked to all this. Next, please. So, this is the global risks, 10 top risks that the world is facing today. And if you look at all this, this is the outcome of that development that we had. What is that? Weapon of mass destruction, for climate change, extreme weather, natural disaster, biodiversity loss, etc., etc., etc. All of this is linked to that development that we feel that we got it. We have now this mobile phone, robotics, artificial intelligence, whatnot, at the cost of all that risk that we are worried everybody is shrinking, that what will happen, shriveling everybody. Next, please. So what we do now, options. We have three options: either business as usual, materialistic world, materialistic society, or we, those 1% of the individual of the world, should live in a fortress to have clean air coming through air condition, clean air going out, and they should not dare to go out on the street in the future. Or we should have some transition that we were taught by these world leaders, religious leaders, that we should have some kind of sustainability of science and religion in harmony. If we do that, what you call it, health spirit is guarantee of health. Sorry, what you know is the peace of mind is the guarantee, and that is not in the word that, next please. So, when we talk about Avicenna, look at what he's saying. The knowledge of anything, since all things have causes, is not acquired to complete unless it is known by its causes. Since morning, the Buddhist teaches, if you look at all this, so you will feel that these are the same that we talk about. And if you look at the bottom, pain, a sensation produced by something contrary to the course of nature. And this sensation is set up by one or two circumstances. So either a very sudden change of the temperament, or the bad effect of contrary temperament, or a solution to continuity, Avicenna said. So he predicted at that time that you will grow, but at the cost of what? And you have to really go back, you have to think, you have to go back to those teaching of those individuals, leaders that they said, either in science and the world. Next, please. Now come to the recent article this year. What scientists are saying, only on one issue that I'm talking about is the human diet, that you converted from a vegetarian to the culture where you consume a lot of meat. And remember, for 1 kilo of meat, you consume 5 kilos of grain. And then the methane gas, and other issues. I'm not going to read all of this for you. But all of this, what the bottom line is, 1 billion people are hungry. Another 2 billion people are eating too much. That is the imbalance that we are in the world. 1 billion people sleep hungry at night. Other 2 billion people waste the amount of food that 2 billion people can eat. More than 50% of food they waste, that goes to the garbage. And I'm not going to read all of, next please. So, again, this Avicenna, in the morning you said something from the religion, and I'm linking all this. I'm really very pleased to hear today in the morning that my belief is going more stronger and stronger. Thank you, sir. Equilibrium and temperament, selection of food, the diet I said in the last slide. Now he is saying 1,000 years ago that be careful what you eat and what you drink. And then safeguarding the composite, maintaining the purity of your air, environment, climate change, and guarding against extraneous conditions, moderation in regard of movement of the body and motion of the mind, which may be included sleep and wakefulness. Now you, at night, midnight, your children are playing with mobile. They don't have good sleep. And then that mind, remember, whoever is sitting in this room, please imagine for a minute. You will have 4 kinds of thoughts every day, every moment. Good when you think about other humans. Selfishness when you think about yourself only. And negative when you want to destroy the rest of the people. So those kind of thinking that even today, everybody has it. It's not in your control. It's you, then your religion and your belief that brings you to the good. Next, please. And this climate change that what happened and what's happening? Those who created this first, they saved themselves again, sitting on the top somewhere, But those who are suffering, they have no sin in creating that climate change, and they are suffering. The most sufferers are the poor communities living in the mountains and the places. The more rich diversity, the bad effect is now there. They are the poorest they are. And you say, don't cut a tree? Why not? His children are at stake. They don't have food. So all these conditions that are, glaciers are melting, snowfall has decreased, specifically in beautiful country like I live in, Pakistan, which is the only country in the world from 0 meter, 8,611 meter, the altitude. And we know what's happening. Then millions of environmental refugees, the poor people, that they have to move, they have to leave their houses. So who will take care of all this? Because the greatest impact of this is on the poor of the poorest. Next, please. Therefore, what's happening? This is pushing them to more poverty. The problem that they have to move, they have to leave, they have to go for remittances in the developed world or other places, and they have to sell their household things to survive. Next, please. So what we need ethical framework, and that is, I'm happy that now they are moving this Avicenna Prize to climate change and ethics to climate change, and it's the right time to do this. Educate more values and global responsibility, create motivation for change, and encouraging the sacrifices that we have to make. Next, please. So, there are religions, but we have to somehow have some kind of environmentalism, and that is that we are running an uncontrolled experiment. The only home, the earth that we are having a kind of an uncontrolled experiment on this, and that is the only home we all have. We share. So we can no longer expect to enjoy peace and security, economic growth, human rights, if we continue to ignore key problems of energy, climate change era, energy supply and demand, climate change, energy and poverty, biodiversity loss. These are all interlinked, and you have to really think about it. Next, please. These are the causes, and the causes, are mainly by that 1% of the world wealth that we got at the cost of the other 99% of the things that we have. So these are those issues, you'd say agricultural growth, you say overfishing in the sea, the greediness of the human being had led to all this that we are facing today. Next, please. So, sustainability is a sort of an ethical concept. We are trustees or stewards of the planet's resources that we have. We are the trustees, we human. We call it, in our religion, we call it ashraf al-makhlukat, quote unquote. But if this one species, there's some people say, if this one species is out, what will happen with the rest of the species that we have? So we must learn how to use these natural resources sustainability. We have to really understand the consequences of environment, consequences with the development. We must temper our actions with moderation and humility. This is the teaching of Buddhism and all the religion that we are taught. So we have to have the deep understanding of the world and the role of humanity, how to keep it sustainable. Next, please. So the solution is solidarity, and solidarity, it is unjust to sacrifice the well-being of the generality of the humankind and even the planet itself to the advantage with technological breakthrough can make available to privileged minorities. The minorities are taking the wealth of the majority. The poor are most vulnerable to climate change and least able to protect themselves. We should consider every human being as a trust of the whole. The goal of wealth creation should be to make everyone wealthy Voluntary giving is more meaningful and effective than forced distribution. This is what all the religions are teaching us. Next, please. So the teaching that there are, we have to have contentment. Our lifestyle. All faiths have taught the spiritual value of a simple life and detachment from material things. Be content with little and be freed from all inordinate desire. And if you look at the Avicenna, he said, I would rather have a short life with a width rather than a narrow one with a length. It's a great meaning philosophically if you think about it. Life has to, you will live how long? 100 years? That's it. 100 years in terms of geology is millisecond, nanosecond. So that is your life. Even you extend it by 10 years, but with having a lot of pills every night, with diabetes, with blood pressures, and with whatnot. Next, please. So, all the religion, climate change is an issue on which we all have a common grounds and we can work together. Next, please. Please go quick because I really have something for you. When we talk about sustainable society, the professor, when he speeches, difficult to stop him. So the values that we should have, justice, solidarity, altruism, respect, trust, moderation, and services. That is that the principles, if you really want to live on, you should follow those principles. Next, please. And I'm not only talking about the poverty in the developing country, you call it developing, you call it third world, different names you have. This is a demonstration in US where they say that there is a 35 years difference in life expectancy between the richest and poorest neighborhood. If you are poor in the neighborhood, you will live 35 years less than the rich because of the difference that resources that you share. Within US, they were demonstrating about this. So, where are we? And sometimes I say usually, I wonder we are same Homo sapien. Next, please. So, when we talk about ethics since morning, as a teacher, when I teach, and he asked me a question, I started this from almost my childhood. And were doing it unknowingly that they will select me for Avicenna Prize. That was my sort of passion that I was working with the society. So that is, how should you and I think or act? We call it normative ethics, or descriptive. What do you or I think is right? If according to you something is right, or the other is the applied ethics when you say, how do you and I take moral knowledge and put it into practice? That is where we applied it with all science and technology achievement. Next, please. So, with the normative ethics, we are concerned with the rightness or wrongness of actions. Rightness or wrongness of actions, whether this development was right or wrong, you have to decide. At what cost? And how should these people think about it? There are two ways of looking. Teleological, I'm not going into technical detail, but the morality of an action depends on the action's outcome. So this outcome of 300 years development, you can talk about its morality. And that the decision should be made considering duties and rights. Some things are always wrong, some things are always right. So that is how we talk about it. Next, please. So, finally, we say consequentialism is an action judged when the outcome is good or bad. So that is that consequences of the actions, and even this 300, 500, 1,000 years in human history is a small period. You still can go back and rethink and can really work on how to, the consequences should outweigh other considerations. That is the most important. Next, please. So, That is where when I was working, the question was, we applied it everywhere. Earlier it was only bioethics on the human side, blood transfusion, etc. Now we talk about environment, we talk about research ethics, we talk about many things. That is what is applied ethics. Next, please. This is the word when Professor Jalali liked it. I said when I was speaking at that time that there is an ethical obligation of emerging technology to alleviate human suffering. We should be doing science to alleviate human suffering, not to increase human sufferings. And the second thing is that science is not unethical. Not to have science is the most unethical. We should be doing science. Our responsibility should be science for the future of man, of the mankind, of the humankind. Next, please. So I had put a photo here which I removed. If some student asks me, what profession should I adopt? The answer should be, and this is a quotation of one of you maybe, be a good human being. There is a huge opportunity in this area and very little competition. If you are a good human being, go and adopt that profession. That is where we are needed. That is in minority. Next, please. So with all this, we have to have a wise decision when we do science, and that is caution, wisdom, and courage. Not going detail. Now, you know, we have synthetic biology. I work in my lab. We have already, scientists have created viruses, bacteria, and if they do without ethics, by 2050, you will have synthetic human being where they will not need any parent, any sperm, any egg, ova. They will be having, a computer will be their father and mother. So if you want to go into that world, come on. Next, please. So the leadership, if you talk about the world leadership, you talk about organization leadership, that should be based on inspiration, not domination, cooperation, not intimidation. But today is other way around. And the other one is that this hierarchical growth, command and control should be engaged and aligned, work with. The message was really great. When they were comparing different religions, think about your children and other children. Think about your parents and other parents. Next, please. And that the leadership of head and heart, that next please, if you go to the other slide, I think, to handle yourself, use your head, and to handle others, use your heart. And that is that the debate is about the leadership. Next, please. What science we do, normally we say this is our science, but all this money is the national exchequer money. So the scientists which in my lab, all the money, whether it comes from UNESCO, from Avicenna, you give me some money, it has gone to some purpose. So that we should remember that this money is from the national poor man's money. The tax that he's paying, the scientists are enjoying that life. But then they have to follow the conventions of international, like we say CBD, that conservation of biodiversity, use of the resources, and fair and equitable sharing of benefits from those resources, natural resources that we have. Next, please. So, if this money is from the society, this money is from the exchequer's money, national exchequer money, so science should be with and for society. We should do science which is good for the society. And for that, what we call it, that whatever education we have, that should be responsible conduct of science with the ethical framework of research and innovation. Science should be for the benefit of the humanity, and that's important. Again, if we look at Avicenna, what he said at that time, there are two incurable diseases in the corner. Only the lack of will, there are no worthless herb, only the lack of knowledge. Whatever is created by Almighty, by nature, everything has some value. Next, please. So, the scientists have a social responsibility. I publish a lot every year, good science. It's not that I'm only teaching ethics, yet we should be knowing that science is neutral, apolitical, value-free. And science is impartial pursuit of knowledge, and knowledge is inherently good. Knowledge is not bad. It's we What we call it, there is no bad molecule. It is the evil human beings that they use it bad. Next, please. So we should be having education, information, accountability, oversight of science. There should be somebody that there is, like UNESCO is doing. And again, if you read Plato at that time, the greatest mistake in the treatment of diseases is that there are physicians for the body, physicians for the soul. Although the two cannot be separated. One doesn't understand the other doesn't understand. This is what religious and science should be working together. Next, please. Go for 2-3 slides, please. Just quick. Here, the few of the countries now, including Iran and China, are talking about old civilization that may resolve current issues. And that is that where we really all should be thinking that those old values have solution for the problem that we have created. Next, please. Again, this modern, the fake news that they are through social media, and if you get the data, 70% lies are retweeted than the truth. Truth takes 6 times longer to reach than the lies that reaches the common man. Next, please. Go quick, 3-4 slides, please. I talk about the universities, what it could be 30 years down the road. So we should all be knowing that this materialistic world will lead us where. Next, please. Please go quick, yeah, more. Next, please. So this is something about the biology that I teach, synthetic biology. We are designing babies. Now you can have choose babies that you want. Next, please. Human clones and others. They're the important issues that one has to focus on. Embryo editing is the last one that now the babies are designed. Next, please. Go quick, please. Next. Here, just one slide, that the religion, like for the CRISPR-Cas9 is a technical word where we edit embryo. Islam, can you go back just for 1 minute? And then here, that is in our religion, they have answered to the question that why you invention something, that called qasad, yaqeen, that will not have bad intentions, darar, etc., etc. So religion has answers to the question. One has to really follow it. Next, please. Next. Go to 4 or 5 slides, please, if I should have. This youth that we are talking, demographic things that we have, this can be used either as energy or they may be frustrated kind of humans. Next, please. Research does not become ethical post hoc. If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. So this is the integrity. I can move it? Okay, thank you. Oh, great. Just 2-3 minutes maybe. I'm closing it. Senior leaders, if they think negative, they really develop toxic culture. And you can understand, I don't want to name anybody, but that is the priorities, unhealthy rivalries, unproductive conflicts that need to really the destruction of the world. They need rigor, respect, responsibility, and that what they say is health does not always come from medicine. Most of that time, it comes from peace of mind, peace in the heart, peace of the soul. It comes from laughter and love than the medicine. And that the biggest concern of any organization should be when their most passionate people become quiet. There is a link of what you call it, terrorism, etc. But these are last 1 or 2 slides. The sun, the moon, and the stars would all have disappeared a long time ago if that had happened to have been within the reach of the predatory human hands. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really grateful, His Excellency Jalali, UNESCO. But once this is for you, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. People like you, few people can change the world. Keep it up, and we are all with you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Professor Shinwari. I'm sure if you had time, you had a lot to add to what we said, your experiences, different question personally I have. But I think that, you know, in the program, there are three speakers. I'm not only the moderator, but one of the speakers. But before I use that minutes, if it is left, I prefer that I go back, with your permission, to the audience. And please, may I ask distinguished audience here that you heard from the points from distinguished speakers here. If you have any question or any comment or something to add, yes, please.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you for your speech, Professor Shinwari. I'm an economist, not a scientist. So, you know, as soon as I realized I couldn't add up 1 to 1 to 2, I decided to become an economist. I just got one question for perhaps Ms. Mélo. Through the presentation, I realized one common thing between all the problems that Professor Shinwari had mentioned. You know, all the landslides, overfishing, environmental problems, imbalance of the food provision and whatnot. I think one common thing is profit, because of the profit-driven activity of modern corporations and the government policy that go with it. So my question is, I understand it takes a long time for the modern government to change the way they run the commercial world. So my question is, how does your sector plan to fuse commercial law or perhaps corporate activity policy with the problems that Professor Shinwari just mentioned? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a very relevant question. First of all, we are not working on the trade and commerce areas, but ethics could be applied to the cooperation and matters related to the trade. The point is how to have a global framework on ethics, including these issues on trade. This is the main problem. The second problem is when you talk about ethics, I appreciate when you mentioned that religions can take part of the ethics, thoughts, principles, etc. The point is how to create the common grounds, how to elaborate all this framework based on consensus, because there is tensions. The third point is, we are agreed that the ethic issues is mostly related to what is wrong, what is right. But who decides this? Who decides this? How to get consensus on what is wrong, what is right? And how to build consensus among our, how do you call, social, how do you call this? Société civile, the people, ordinary people. How to elevate the bar of the discussions and the debates on ethical issues. We have our national bioethics and ethics of science and technology committees in each country. But the point is, how can we have outcomes from these debates in order to have, from the national, regional, international, this global framework, including issues on trades and in order to have the world less materialists and go forward in humanism, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes, please.
Dear sir and madams, dear master, dear my sister and brother here, it's my pleasure and it's my very, very honor to be here today. Living in harmonious and, with all the faith of all the groups to benefit on our society. So that's all my questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Something, if I could understand properly. You know, what in my life I studied about all different religions, then they never confront actually. The only problem is when you want to dominate the other one, when you want to think that you are the perfect and another one is not, that is where the problem begins. What we say in a simple English, live and let live. You do your thing and respect all others that they have, respect for all the religions and all people that they worship. And my philosophically speaking, I was born in Pakistan in a Muslim family, and you may have born in a Buddhist family. So you practice yours, I practice mine. It's none of my fault, it's none of your fault. So why then we really force other one to, and sometimes if they believe in something, we say, why they believe that one? Come on, man. So we need a big heart, and that is there, where we have to respect all the religions of the world, I think, and that is the way that to go on.
Thank you very much. May I add a point here, because, of course, it's not related directly to the question, but because you mentioned this. Madam Mélo mentioned the importance of the personality of Avicenna. You mentioned also his legacy. And let me tell you that Avicenna at his time had problems. Social problems, political problems. In his short life, he was imprisoned in different places. And he was criticized at his time by religious people. He is the figure of the whole Islamic civilization, perhaps the most renowned character, and one of the most renowned characters of human beings, of all humanity. But he was under pressure from some narrow-minded people at his time, religious people, because of their own narrow interpretation of a Muslim faith. And you know, Avicenna was a poet. I would like to read for you one of his very short rubai poems. And through that, you can find out that 1,000 years ago, on such an environment, such a figure, he was accused. He is the source of all knowledge of his time. He was accused that he doesn't have faith. He is a non-believer. He was accused by some people because of his own interpretation. You know, in his philosophical work, in his mystical work, his argument is the sharpest philosophical one ever seen in the old Islamic civilization at that time. And he was accused that he is a non-believer. You know what he said? This poem. I will read to change the environment in a poetic one. He says, Kofre chomani gazal fa'al san nabovat. I read in Persian. I will translate. Kofre chomani gazal fa'al san nabovat. بالاتر از ایمان من ایمان نبود در دهر چو من یکی و آن هم کافر پس در همه دهر یک مسلمان نبود. He said that all people, are you accusing me to be non-believer? Oh, it is not an easy job that you attribute that to me because I have reached the highest level of faith. And if that highest level, in accordance to my knowledge, my philosophical mind, my scientific mind, if that highest orbit is known by you to be non-believing, then there is no believer in the whole world. Yeah. May I, first of all, because of the shortage of time, please be very brief, make your point in maximum 3 minutes if you can. And, because there was the mentioning of how we understand religion or other disciplines, spiritual disciplines, I would like to make a point here for the future thought. You know that when we look at the faith and religion, there are two ways that we may understand a spiritual discipline or a religion. One understanding is that it culminates to the claim that I know the truth. One understanding of one religion could be that because of this faith that I have, then I have access to the truth. This is one understanding. Another understanding is that, of the same religion, is that because of my faith, I know that I don't have access to the truth. Sometimes religiosity of the same religion gives you to be wondered. I wonder about the mysteries of this universe. Therefore, the more religious, the less I claim. And sometimes the same religiosity could take us to the point that the more religious, the more you are ambitious to claim. These are the two different approaches. You have in the same discipline, for example, I give an example from the Islamic civilization. When you come to Jalaluddin Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, you know him. In UNESCO, we created a medal of Jalaluddin Rumi 800 years ago. He says his main message is that because of his religious understanding, he says that my highest claim is that I don't know. I am wondered. Therefore, you become humble. And this is the difference between the ontological approach to religion or epistemological one. Epistemologically, it is a subjective matter. Whether being religion come, as Socrates said. You know, Socrates said that if I were not afraid that people accuse me, that I am making a big claim, I would have said that I know nothing. That I know nothing is the highest claim of a supreme understanding of religion. I didn't want to come to this point, but because of some points made by distinguished audience, big questions come. I wanted just to introduce to, you mentioned Buddhist doctrines this morning. You heard a lot. And we are very thankful of Master Ching Kung Association that give us this opportunity to talk about this. But let me come to conclude, because we are thinking of how to make faith, cultures. It is not only religion, it's cultures. A high percentage of our religiosity is our culture, man-made product. And it is the culture, it is faith. All of this needs a modality for dialogue. A modality for dialogue. That through that modality, we understand that there is another realm to meet. To meet what? The point that I claim or the point that I'm humble. Therefore, may I conclude by translating 2 lines from Jalaluddin Rumi again. Listen, this is the conclusion what I want to say, and I want to invite to think like that. Rumi said that out beyond the idea of right doing or wrongdoing, there is another field. I shall meet you there. Out beyond the idea of right doing or wrongdoing, there is another field. I shall meet you there. When the soul lies down on that beautiful grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, languages, and even the phrase of each other does not make any sense. I will meet you there. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. C'est une question très courte.
Thank you very much. It's a very short question. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your inspiring presentations. I just wanted to ask you this. You've spoken about ethics. Isn't there a distinction to be drawn between religious-inspired ethics, inspired by spirituality, and relative lay, secular ethics, which is always changing? Isn't that true? So there's a real question there. What sort of ethics are we talking about? And how can ethics inspire our work in the future?
Thank you very much. I think that is a very, very important question. But unfortunately, this important question is made in the end of time. I think we need another 2 hours of discussion later on, because his question is very deep, is that, okay, when we talk about ethics, in which paradigm, may I say my understanding is that, in which paradigm are we going to draw the basis for that? And this has been a very deep question that, for example, one of the masters of philosophical thought, Immanuel Kant, in the 18th century, paid lots of attention to investigate on that, the basis of that. And I think that I suggest that if you have any comment, but I think with your permission, this is a philosophical deep question that we need time for that. And if anybody reacted in 1 or 2 minutes, it will not touch the core. Will you agree with me?
Yes, I agree that I'm going to talk about that tomorrow in my speech.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, that's wonderful. That he said that he agrees with me that we are not going to touch that. He said tomorrow in his speech, he is going to develop that. It is wonderful. So we wait for that. I think we have another 5 minutes. And Professor Shinwari, Madam Mélo, do you want to say in the end 2 minutes something? Or anything left?
Yes, I sincerely thank very much for your contributions and participations. I think behind ethics, what I really think is we should combine, for example, we have the frameworks on human rights, okay? This is rights. But beyond rights, we should include embedded ethics. You go beyond, your behavior is beyond all these rights, duties, and so on and so on. And this is the lesson number 1, because if you embedded your principle, your way, your behavior, your attitude on ethics, you become better. And the world can become better, rather than always see the parameters on rights, the frameworks. For example, if I'm the police, I provide something under the law, but you can go beyond this law and to provide more human treatment to each other. This is my really last takeaway message. Thank you.
Just 30 seconds. First of all, I really appreciate the type of audience that we had today. I think you clapped for us, but we clapped for all of you that you had a wonderful kind of attendance till evening and the interest that you had. Just to add to the last sentence, rights goes with duties. With duties first. In our language, we say first, duty. So you think about yourself, then you claim for your rights. First, you think what you have to do, behave. And I wish I could have time, I could have spoken, but that's good that you are speaking tomorrow. Of course, when we talk about ethics, irrespective, we talk about religious more because today the gathering warranted such discussion, but otherwise, like professor, I called him Jalali also. He's a professor, I'm his student now. So, like he said, we need to discuss it tomorrow again. And I feel sorry for a few people who could have spoken better than us, that we couldn't have time to talk to you. Thank you very much.
I know that there are lots of questions and comments that we can hear, but unfortunately we came to that then. And you know that I had 2 jobs in this, one as a moderator, the other as a speaker, but I canceled my job as a speaker, only I have been moderator to have time for others. I think that's much better. But let me put an end, we have 2 minutes. Let me put an end Will you give us another 5 minutes? Probably, the interpreters. Okay, 5 minutes is forgivable. What? No? Okay. Just what the point mentioned by Professor Shinwari said that with the rights, because he's going to talk about the foundation of ethics in his speech. No, excuse me, let me finish, please. Professor Shinwari mentioned that with rights, we have to think of duties. Otherwise, we cannot claim for rights. And the young girl there mentioned about the project of UNESCO. I would like to put an end to our discussion because he mentioned these rights and duties. I have a quotation from Mahatma Gandhi. Last week, we had a ceremony in this room, the celebration of 150 years of the birth of Mahatma Gandhi. It was a wonderful celebration by India. When I was president of UNESCO General Conference here in 2001, I had the occasion and I had this duty to go to the archive of UNESCO about the development of ideas. I found a letter, a short letter from Mahatma Gandhi, which said the same point, It is wonderful. I don't remember all of that by heart, but I remember some sentences. I said, the letter is dated May 1947. May 1947. At that time, Julian Huxley was the first Director General of UNESCO. And Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, was doing his job for liberation of India. And there were a group of people, of thinkers and philosophers who were drafting the Declaration of Human Rights. Julian Huxley wrote a letter to Gandhi saying that, Mr. Gandhi, thinkers are drafting the Declaration of Human Rights. Do you have any point to suggest? I saw the reply, very short reply of Gandhi. It says that, Mr. Julian Huxley, Nehru told me that you wrote a letter to me asking this question. I was very busy. I couldn't reply. Now I am in a train going, there is a problem somewhere. I'm going to solve it. Therefore, I have time to shortly reply to you. And then this reply is this. My mother, this is the letter of Gandhi. My mother, an illiterate, used to tell me that with any rights, there lies a duty. And those who are not ready to perform their duties cannot expect to receive their rights. And a world only claiming for rights and not duties will not be a world that you can have your human rights. What I said was the content of that, because I don't know by heart the exact sentence, except the first sentence, my mother an illiterate. And I think this could be a foundation for the paradigm of ethics that we can follow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Shinwari. Thank you, Madam Baron. Thank you, the dear audience. All the best for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Donc, on va continuer demain.
So we shall continue tomorrow. I wish you a very pleasant evening. It's been a great start to the conference.
Enjoy Paris. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Merci.